My name is Sarah Whitfield, and I am 29 years old. 8 months ago, my mother-in-law sat across from me at Sunday dinner and told me my husband was exploring options. That was her phrase, exploring options. Like he was choosing a college, not planning to leave his wife for the woman his family had already picked. I smiled. I said I understood. What none of them knew was that 3 weeks before that dinner, I had already met with a lawyer my grandfather had hired for me 15 years earlier. A man they had never heard of, holding documents they had never seen. The next morning, while they celebrated quietly in the kitchen, my husband's father made one phone call to transfer the business accounts. The call failed. All of them. Every single one. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to 9 years ago, to a small house with a porch that smelled like cedar, when my grandfather said something I didn't understand until that Sunday dinner. I was 20 years old the summer I moved in with my grandfather, Walter. His house sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by walnut trees. The porch smelled like cedar and pipe tobacco, and in the evenings, the screen door made a sound like a held breath before it clicked shut. I remember his hands the most. Rough, cracked at the knuckles, but gentle when he taught me to fix the latch on the old shed. He built furniture for 40 years. His hands knew wood the way some people know language. We ate dinner at 6 every evening. Simple food, roast chicken, bread he baked himself. The kitchen always smelled like rosemary and wood smoke from the stove. One night, fixing that same latch for the third time, he said something I didn't understand then. "Sarah," he said, not looking up from the wood, "the people who love you protect you quietly. The people who want something from you protect themselves loudly. Learn the difference before you need to." I laughed. I was 20. I thought he meant something about choosing friends. My parents were different. Cold dinners, calculated conversations, my mother always asking what something was worth before asking what it meant. When I told them I'd met someone, Daniel, kind eyes, quiet ambition, my mother's first question wasn't about him. It was about his family's company. I didn't understand the warning in my grandfather's voice that summer. I would understand it 9 years later, sitting in his old house, listening through a closed door. My grandfather passed 2 years after I married Daniel. At the funeral, Daniel's mother, Carol, wore black perfectly. She held my hand and said all the right words. 3 days later, in the hallway outside the kitchen, I heard her on the phone with Daniel's father. "The old man's house is worth more than people think," she said. "Walnut acreage like that doesn't come cheap. We should talk to Daniel about consolidating things. For Sarah's sake, of course." For Sarah's sake. That's the word they use for everything that used to be love. Consolidating, exploring options. For your sake. I said nothing. I stood in that hallway and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, something colder and more useful. I filed it away. I started visiting the house alone on weekends, telling Daniel I needed space to grieve. I paid the property taxes myself, quietly, from an account they didn't know existed. I kept the porch swept. I kept the latch oiled. Family dinners changed after that. Carol stopped asking how I was doing and started asking what my plans were for the property. Daniel's father referred to my grandfather's life's work as the asset. Daniel started agreeing with both of them, slowly, the way water wears down stone. I realized something during those months. To them, I had become invisible, a placeholder, a formality, someone to be managed until the real plan could move forward. I decided to use that invisibility. If they didn't think I was paying attention, I would make sure I was paying attention to everything. I found the envelope in March, tucked behind a loose board in my grandfather's workshop, the same board he'd shown me how to pry up when I was 20. Inside was a key, a business card for a law office in the city, and a single folded note in his handwriting. "For when you need it, W." I didn't act right away. I sat with it for 2 days before I called the number. The lawyer's name was Mr. Holbrook. He had represented my grandfather for over 30 years. When I came in, he already had a file waiting. Thick, organized, dated back 9 years. "Your grandfather restructured his estate the year you got married," he said, sliding the folder toward me. "He placed the house, the land, and a trust fund in your name alone, protected, separate from any marital assets. He suspected this family might try to absorb what wasn't theirs. I sat very still. He suspected. 9 years ago, before Carol's first phone call, before Daniel's father called it the asset. My grandfather had built a wall around me before I even knew I needed one. Mr. Holbrook explained the rest. Daniel's family had been quietly trying to get power of attorney documents signed, paperwork buried in stacks Daniel brought home for taxes. They wanted control of the property before announcing the divorce, so the house would already belong to the family business when Daniel moved on. I had overheard the exact numbers 2 nights earlier. Daniel's father on the phone, naming a sale price for land he didn't own. I sent Mr. Holbrook 2 words that night. I'm ready. That evening, I watched Carol toast at dinner to new beginnings. She had no idea the only thing beginning was already finished. Mr. Holbrook laid it out simply. The trust was airtight. The property had never been marital property. Legally, it was never theirs to plan around. All I needed to do was formally activate the trust's transfer clause, removing any ambiguity before the divorce filing. Once you sign, there's no path for them to claim it, he said. Not now, not in negotiation, not ever. That same week, Daniel tried something new. Soft eyes over coffee, a hand on mine. Maybe we don't need lawyers involved in everything, Sarah. We're still family. I looked at him for a long moment. I'll think about it, I said. His shoulders relaxed. He thought he'd won something. My younger cousin, Mia, noticed first. The way I'd gone quiet at dinners. The way I stopped correcting Carol when she talked about the property like it was hers. You okay? Mia asked one night. You've been somewhere else lately. I told her I was fine. I wasn't lying exactly. I was somewhere else. I was already on the other side of this. The night before I signed, I drove out to my grandfather's house alone. I sat on the porch in the cold and let myself feel all of it. The grief, the betrayal, the exhaustion of smiling through 8 months of being managed by people who never once asked if I was all right. I almost called Daniel. I almost wanted to scream at Carol to make them understand what they'd done. Then I remembered the latch, the cedar smell, the lesson I hadn't understood at 20. I cried that night, not from weakness, from clarity. I wish this were different. I wish Daniel had been the kind of husband who would have protected me instead of calculating around me. I wish his family had welcomed me instead of pricing me. But wishes don't hold up. The trust does. It was 11:50 p.m. when I opened my laptop in the quiet of my apartment. Mr. Holbrook joined the call exactly on time, his voice calm through the speaker. Ready when you are. I signed each document slowly. The trust transfer. The formal severance of any shared claim. The notarized confirmation that the house, the land, and the accounts my grandfather built were, and always had been, mine alone. Your grandfather would be proud of how you handled this, Mr. Holbrook said. Quietly, smart, no noise. The clock on my screen blinked to 12:03 a.m. I am 29. I am the sole owner of everything they spent 8 months trying to take. And across town, in a house that still smelled like Carol's expensive candles, Daniel's father was likely asleep, dreaming about a sale that would never close, a property that had already slipped through his hands months before he ever reached for it. He'll find that out in about 9 hours. The family gathered the next evening for what Carol called a small dinner, though I knew by then it was meant to be the night Daniel finally told me about exploring options. Daniel's father pulled me aside before dessert. Sarah, we wanted to talk about the property. Simplify things for everyone's sake. I looked at him, calm. There's nothing to simplify. It was never available to discuss. His phone rang 20 minutes later. I watched his face change as the bank representative explained why the transfer request had been rejected. Invalid authorization, properties held in an irrevocable trust, no path for appeal. He looked at me like I was still the woman who smiled and said nothing. I wasn't. I hadn't been for 8 months. Carol's wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Daniel said nothing at all. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply finished my dinner and thanked them for having me. My grandfather used to say that the people who love you protect you quietly, and the people who want something from you protect themselves loudly. I always thought he meant something simple. Choose your friends carefully. He meant something deeper. He meant, build your safety before you ever need it, and let your silence be the proof of your strength. Daniel and I divorced quietly that spring. His family's business struggled without the expansion they'd planned around land that was never theirs. Mr. Holbrook still manages the trust. We have coffee twice a year, and he still calls me the smartest client Walter ever protected. As for me, I still have the house. The porch still smells like cedar in the evenings. The screen door still makes that same sound, like a held breath, before it clicks shut. I think about my grandfather every time I oil that latch, and I think, some inheritances aren't property, they're patience. If you've ever had to stay quiet to protect what mattered most, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe. There are more to come.